Hello everybody and welcome to That's Football. Who has been the biggest flops of this Premier League season so far? We're going to be talking signing flops and general flops as well. You could put someone like Son in there at Spurs because he wasn't signed in the summer, but maybe he's had a bit of a flop season. Lots to get involved with. First of all, can I just say it's good to be back. The international break is nearly over. In fact, it is over. We're back with watch-alongs on Saturday and it's basically every day then from there. You've got the Champions League back next week. What 2 months of football we've got. Get yourself subscribed to That's Football. We've got loads to discuss. So happy the international break is over. But before we get into all that, don't forget, we're sponsored by Manscaped on the show today. Trim the grass to make the yard look bigger. Use the code FOOTY and get 20% off and free worldwide shipping. If you don't know what Manscaped is, it's this beauty 4.0. It's got a lovely light on it for a more precise shave, and basically it's for trimming down there. It's got electromagnetic induction charging, which you just drop it in the port. There's no wire to it. Adjustable length if you want, and it's waterproof. But basically, I wouldn't use it when you're wet down there because it all gets stuck together. You just want to do it and then rinse off afterwards. Fantastic product. You can also get it as part of the performance package where you get the weed whacker, which is for your nose. Comes in a travel bag, which I use all the time. You get ball deodorant, boxer shorts. Fantastic products with Manscaped. Check it out through the link in the video description. As I say, 20% off and free worldwide shipping. They do ship worldwide with the code FOOTY, or just scan that code with your phone, the camera phone next to me, and it'll take you straight through and take the discount off for you. Fantastic Manscaped. Trim that grass, make the yard look bigger. It makes a big difference. I actually, the battery, I'd not charged mine up actually, and I went to use it the other day, and I was having a panic attack because it wouldn't work. I had to wait a few hours, and I was just like, it's out of control. Enough of that. I'll tell you what's out of control though. Not Manchester United. I thought it was on the United stand there. What's out of control is how ridiculously bad some of these players have been this year that we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about players that were bought in the summer and who's been the flop of the season there. And then I want to just talk about a few players that weren't bought in the summer but have had horrific seasons. Maybe Mo Salah could be in there. I certainly think Mason Mount, Son. There's a few other people that have been mentioned. Some people want to put Jadon Sancho in there if they want. So look, we'll talk about those in a minute. But let's talk about the summer signing, maybe January signing, who's been the flop of the season so far. And I think for me, there is one clear candidate, but we did a community tab about this on the community page, funny enough, and two names did predominantly come out quite a lot. Richarlison at Spurs and Calvin Phillips at Manchester City. I mean, that signing is ridiculous. We'll come to that. But a few people mentioned people like Cucurella at Chelsea. Somebody even mentioned Mudryk, which I just think, if you're judging a player in January when it's March, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. I don't think that there's any player, whether it's Jorginho, Trossard, Mudryk, Badiashile, whoever else was bought in January, Gakpo at Liverpool, you can't judge these players in January. And I'm not going to put any player in January in the running for this because it's completely unfair. For one, logically, you're judging them after 2 months when the summer signings have had, 6-7 months. On top of that, it is difficult to come from one league, especially into another league halfway through in a season in a team that's struggling like Chelsea and Liverpool. So I think and they've not had a pre-season, and both those clubs are struggling. It doesn't surprise me that Jorginho and Trossard would be considered good signings, yet they're doing it in good sides that are settled and doing well. And Gakpo and all the Chelsea lads would be considered, potentially not good signings, but they're parachuting into teams that are struggling. I think that not everybody's a Bruno Fernandes, not everyone's a Luis Diaz who just falls into the team in January and does really, really well. So I wouldn't include any of those. I'm looking at summer signings, and one player I would mention from Chelsea, and it's not Cucurella, would be Raheem Sterling. I think he has fell off a cliff in relation to his form and capability and impact. I don't know why he doesn't get mentioned more. I completely agree about Calvin Phillips, Richarlison. Some people mentioned Jed Spence at Spurs, Cucurella, as we've mentioned before. Some people wanted to mention Anthony at Manchester United, and I think that's maybe that's worth looking at. But on the other hand, he has scored some goals. It has had a few injuries. It has been a bit stop-start. he's not hit the heights, but I wouldn't put him as a flop. And I'm a great believer in Anthony will become a good player for Manchester United. And as we've said, Fabinho's first season at Liverpool wasn't particularly good, but he went on to be bloody brilliant. So I don't think Anthony falls into the category of some of the players we're talking about here. Raheem Sterling for me was a very, very good player at Manchester City, who at Chelsea doesn't look interested. And that's a very unfair thing to say, because I'm sure he is interested, but he doesn't look interested. He doesn't look happy. He doesn't look comfortable. For the player that they were getting, twice double Premier League winner, I would consider Sterling in that category of being considered as a bit of a flop because of the standards that he set. Cucurella, look, they overpaid for him. The two candidates for me, though, I'm not going to beat about the bush on this, Richarlison and Calvin Phillips. Now, Richarlison, for me, has, I think for Richarlison, he's a good player. I don't know why they bought him. That's the thing with Richarlison. I think if he actually was given more game time and they played to his strengths, he would score goals. We've seen that at Everton and we've seen it for Brazil. He doesn't suit that Spurs side. And to be fair, Kulusevski's not set the world on fire this year. Son certainly hasn't. I mean, Harry Kane is very consistent, but Harry Kane knows that club like the back of his hand, and in many ways it plays to Harry Kane's strengths. They don't play with a number 10, so he can drop in there, he can get involved in the build-up. He's the figurehead of the attack. So look, Richarlison straight away can't play where Kane does, and then you're asking him to play in Son's position or Kulusevski's position, who neither have played particularly well this year. I do think that Richarlison has been a flop for Spurs, and I think he's a consideration. And get your comments in below, because I think everyone's going to have different opinions here. In fact, I'd like you to do your top three, actually. I think that'd be very interesting. Who are your top three flops of the season, signings-wise? I personally would go Sterling at number 3, Richarlison at number 2, and number 1, Calvin Phillips. I mean, how he got called up for England last week is only explained by the prat we've got in charge. I mean, I think it's bordering on, corrupt to be picking players that don't play in their Premier League side. I mean, if I was James Ward-Prowse or any other midfielder that's English and I've been playing football this season, I'd be writing a letter of complaint to the FA saying, what is this all about? I know you're winning games, but, what message are you sending out to the fans and people in football that you don't need to play for your club team, but you can start for your national team? It's bloody ridiculous. It's also ridiculous how little he's played. They paid £60 million for him. Calvin Phillips was a player that's been linked with Manchester United. Calvin Phillips was a decent player at Leeds. Wherever you rank him, he was a decent Premier League player. He's gone to Man City, he's hardly played. It's the most ridiculously stupid flop signing I've ever seen. Is it just for the homegrown quota? How bad is Calvin Phillips? I mean, I just do not get it. And I don't think he's particularly bad. I just think he has to go down by a very long way. I mean, we can debate Richarlison and Sterling all night, but Calvin Phillips is the flop of the season because it's the most ridiculous signing I've ever seen. And actually, I think Southgate picking him for England compounded that and just showed it how stupid it is. You're picking a player that's decent but can't even play for his club team. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. You're telling me that a little bit more money and potentially a Premier League winners' medal, which you don't deserve because you've not played, is more satisfying than playing week in, week out for Leeds. I mean, footballers need... we hear about some of the wages that Mason Mount and everyone else is asking for as part of their contracts or they're going to leave. Playing football is surely what you'll regret it when you retire. You should be playing football. So Calvin Phillips by a long way for me. As for who would be the flop of the season in general, there's too many to mention. But there are some notable ones I would mention. I think Son has had a very disappointing season considering last year, he won the Golden Boot with Salah. I don't know what's happened to Son, but maybe, I don't know. I think even he this week has said about Conte, he was a good manager and we just didn't do enough. But Son's had a really weird season. Mason Mount, we've mentioned him. He's had a really weird season. I think in some ways Salah has as well. And there'll be completely crap players that we could mention. But I almost think that when you're talking about players, mentioning Son and Mount and Salah is probably more credible because they have a high ceiling and they've not hit it this year. And quite a few players haven't hit it this year. The World Cup was in November, so they weren't hitting it before the World Cup. I don't know what that's all about. Maybe it's the last few years of catching up on players. Maybe players are playing too much. I don't know. But I would say probably Son for me has been the biggest disappointment this year because I hold him in such high esteem. And it's almost been a bit of a write-off season for him. And I know Spurs aren't great, but he's such a talent. You'd expect him still to be great in a bad side. And it's just not worked out. Anyway, get your comments in below. Make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe. And don't forget to get Manscaped. Trim the grass to make the yard look bigger. 20% off.